People with disabilities have been forgotten under the pandemic. Everything about us has been, in fact, without us. When we say nothing about us without us. And we're going to talk about that today. Welcome to a brand new episode of The Pity Party, our first episode of 2022. We are three Muslim women from different parts of the world coming together in the Greater Toronto area with combined experience of over 150 years, because we're all in our 50s, sharing our stories of intersectionality, of race, culture, gender, and lived experience of disability. The Pity Party is brought to you by Dean Support Services. I'm Rabia, and I'm blind.
I'm Omaya, and I'm in a wheelchair.
And our third woman, Rafia, is absent today because her wheelchair broke down and she's also not feeling well. So we're going to have some episodes here where there's not a trio, there's only two of us, or we have new guests, but stay tuned to see and experience our creativity. Okay. Omaya, Today we're going to talk about the impact of the pandemic. We're going to talk about living through COVID. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the barriers that have arisen for us. And we're going to talk about how the system has forgotten us and how our community has forgotten us. Our experiences and our needs and our requirements have in fact been neglected from the get-go.
Right.
When people started to put into place emergency measures, emergency supports, and as we went through this hiccup of opening and closing and opening and closing, even in terms of our places of worship. So let's chat about that. Omaya, tell me, what has your experience been like during COVID?
Yeah, COVID has been really... it seems like it's been forever, like where we are isolated, right? Like as people with disabilities or as a person with disability, like isolation is like our kind of, sad to say, it's our reality, right? Now COVID time add another layer of isolation where you can't go anywhere. It's like we're vulnerable. It adds to our vulnerability. And let alone if you get COVID, like if you're just dealing with the pandemic and you don't firsthand get it, it's if you get COVID, it's another layer of like isolation and loneliness and challenges for you, because as is having a disability, you already need a lot of support and you're looking for it, right? Physical support, not just like emotional support. Physical support, there's a lot of things you can't do on your own. So if you get COVID, you're really like your caregiver can't take a big chance on you, so you limit the time with the caregiver because you want to avoid spreading it. But at the same time, it causes additional stress for you. Like instead of focusing on getting better and taking care of yourself, you're also focusing on you don't want to spread the virus, and so, and you want to be responsible and all that. It's just a dilemma. Like I find, I experienced COVID myself, right? And I was in my room for like maybe 10 days. I went to two places in the house, my room and the washroom, right? Because I didn't want to spread it. So you can imagine what you're feeling. 24 hours, you're trapped in your room. And my caregiver, I said, don't come, please, because she has a family too. I did not want to spread it. So one of my girls took care of me, and she would make the food and she bring it to me. And I was lucky to have her around and able to do that. So it's just a challenge upon challenge, Rabia, in my view.
Yes, absolutely. And the same thing, for me, I haven't had COVID, not that I know of, because I've had no symptoms. Yeah. But in the past week, a couple of my kids came down with mild symptoms, and I can't have anybody coming in and out of the house to help me with anything. So I've been working, I've been trying to cook, I've been trying to clean. So, I have little scratches from, knifing vegetables, and little, disasters of breaking glass and things like that, because I'm trying to
Hard,
multitask, and, that pretending to see thing that I do, right?
hard.
Like, I pretend to see a lot, and because I pretend, my hands are busy multitasking, trying to help me pretend to see and do. It's a disaster.
It is hard. Yeah.
So,
It,
and we hear so many stories, Amaya. Like, we're hearing, and we're lucky, you and I, again, we're blessed. We have
yeah.
families, right?
Yeah.
We have grown kids
Yeah.
at this stage in our lives.
Yeah.
There are women with disabilities,
Alone.
people with disabilities
Living alone.
who are absolutely alone,
Right.
have nobody, and
Hard.
their attendant or
Hard.
personal support worker or caregiver are their only
Right.
friend, are their only outside
Yeah.
contact, if they are stuck at home,
Yeah.
if they are
Yeah.
quote unquote homebound and isolated to that extent.
Yeah.
And they don't even have that under COVID because, either their support worker has gotten COVID,
Right.
or they've gotten COVID, or, just supply and demand. There's, people, because of the emergency measures and agencies saying that support workers can't work more than one job, which is, been the norm in the past, that they're working multiple jobs to make ends meet. Um, Now they can't do that. So there aren't enough caregivers out there.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
true.
it's really been miserable for people.
It's true. It's and I find also the worst part is like when you have COVID, you really need care. Like you need special food. You can't just eat anything because you don't have the appetite, right? And it's like attacking your immune system, right? So you really need this food. So you're in a catch 22, right? If you don't have anybody to prepare the right food for you, like soup or like some light food, right? Or some like lemonade, for example, or lemon water, or what have you. Like you could be really spending a long time in it. Like you won't get rid of it. It could really, this the lack of support and the lack of service, to you. And also if you're not working and you don't make money and you're living off your like allowance, like disability allowance. I can't even think or imagine what would your life be. How many layers of stress you have to deal with. Like you're tight on money, you're sick, and you have like your caregiver, you cannot expose them too much, you have to limit that. So it's like isolation and loneliness, and you have nobody to talk to. It's just too much, I find this is where we say like we count on the government support, right, during this time for the people with disabilities. Like they're like, they're not really looked after. Like during the pandemic, they were not. I mean, what, they were given $500 or something. What does that do? Like when the cost
Yeah,
of
$600.
yeah, when
Yeah.
the cost of
Yeah.
food keep going up, like what can you do? Like, there's so much. How much stretching of that dollar you're gonna do? Like,
And Maya, you bring up a really good, topic, like the other part of my life, disability without
yeah,
poverty. Yes, you're right. There was only a one-time payment of $600 given to people with disabilities in 2020, and it was at the end of
right,
2020 when everybody else got the emergency, relief benefit.
right,
In April, in May, in June, seniors, students, working age Canadians, and people with disabilities, only those that were eligible. Not every person with a disability
right,
was even eligible
right,
because there was a whole process of, filing your taxes and having the disability tax credit, uh, uh, eligibility requirement met, and all that kind of stuff to be able
yeah,
to get that one-time only benefit. People didn't see that money until, November, December, or into 2021. And this week, actually, so Disability Without Poverty undertook a nationwide petition process, a parliamentary e-petition, that gathered 17,874 signatures asking the government. So the government did make a good promise, and it's our job as people with disabilities to hold them to it. They promised the Canada Disability Benefit, and we want that benefit fast-tracked.
Right.
We want that money given to people with disabilities,
Yeah.
you know, in like
Yeah.
as soon as possible,
Right.
without delay,
Right.
because you're absolutely right. The individuals with disabilities, you know, that are living in poverty
Right.
can't afford food.
Yeah.
People with disabilities are depending on food banks more than ever
Right.
before. And having to choose, like I've talked to people directly who are saying, I can't go buy my over-the-counter painkiller
Yeah.
to survive day to day,
Yeah.
to do my daily living
Yeah.
activities, because I have to choose. Do I buy food or do I buy the painkiller?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're getting to that. And what really is sad is like the issue of the people with disability is not something new. Like it should be known. It's not like, like the government, the agencies, everybody know that they're a vulnerable sector, that they need the extra support. I can't even understand why the delay in, like, why we give syrup and we give for everybody else, but the people with disability, we leave them to the end and we give them like $600 and then expect them to survive on that. Like, it's like, like, what's the message we're trying to send out, right? Like, they don't matter. We don't care about them. Like, what is it? I'm
Well,
trying to
you're
understand.
absolutely right. Yeah.
Like, we don't care
It's a
about,
question
like, we
of
don't care
value.
about them. Like, what is this? Like, I try to understand, like, the reasoning or the logic behind it, and I really can't come up with anything. Like, what is it? If you have a vulnerable
Well,
person,
what we're hearing from Canadians, Omaya, is that Canadians don't appreciate this reality of people with disabilities being so disadvantaged or marginalized in our society. They are realizing the impact of COVID, of how much more marginalized disabled people have become when they live in poverty. And it's no longer good enough. So we have to do our part
right,
to raise
right,
awareness, raise our
right.
voices, and make enough noise
Yeah,
that this benefit gets fast tracked so people with disabilities have a livable income. And we can talk on and on about everything that's going on, but
yeah,
let's quickly touch on, you know, when we've started to reopen community centers and places of worship, what's happened there when it comes to people with disabilities? Again, we've been told don't come
right.
because you're vulnerable.
Right. This again, like it's just not just the money is one thing, like financial support is one thing, but there's other like support that really like the people with disability, they're already deprived, they're already marginalized in good days, like in good times, not like COVID times, right? So it's like they're neglected as if like you're okay, you got used to this life, so just stay away, right? They don't want to see you, as if like you bring down, like if you calm down, you're bringing issues, like additional issues to them, like it's sad. Like they're human beings. They need to go to the places of worship. They need to be active outside in the community. They need, like, if they need it a lot more than the people without disabilities, right? Like why do we expect? Like again, Rabi'an, when you say like we have to fight and we have to raise our voice, like I'm with you 100%. But why do we have to do that? Why is it upon the vulnerable people, right, to rise up despite all the challenges that they have and fight for their right? Like it's just like we as a system, we put so much pressure and so much responsibility on the people who need help and need support instead of lending a hand. Even the community, like I'm not like sparing anybody. Honestly, it seems like everybody is busy with their own thing, and people with disabilities don't raise your voice or don't complain, and don't, so they're neglected, right? Nobody account for them.
So, yeah, so today we've talked about living with COVID ourselves, the new barriers that have arisen as a result of COVID. We talked about a number of experiences that we're hearing about. We're talking about, disability and poverty and the Canada Disability Benefit and all this stuff. We've covered a lot of ground, and we know there's a lot more to cover. But, we want to know from those who are listening to us. We want them to comment on this episode
Absolutely.
and tell us
Absolutely.
what's the impact of COVID on your lives,
Right.
and what do you think needs to be done.
Absolutely.
So we'll leave you with that question today.
Yeah.
We'll leave you with that question. Tell us, what's your COVID story? What do you think needs to be done going forward as we rise stronger together out of this pandemic? Hashtag pity party. So this is the end of our first episode in 2022 of the Pity Party. Thanks for joining us. Salamu alaikum.